Hello Khan Academy, my name is Brian. I will be talking today about the subjunctive in Spanish. I know it's not eligible for the competition, but it's something I wanted to contribute. Hola a todos, hello everyone. Welcome to my class about the subjunctive in Spanish. Specifically today we're going to be talking about the temporal use of the subjunctive. That is to say, the subjunctive in expressions of time. Now, my name is Brian. I've spent the last year teaching English in Spain, and I know the subjunctive can be a really difficult topic. So let's get into some of the things we're going to be learning today. We're going to be learning about how to use subjunctive with words like esperar. We see the subjunctive here. Verbs like querer, the subjunctive here, and expressions like para qué, and the subjunctive here. Now, first and foremost, the subjunctive is a tense. It is a way that we conjugate verbs, and we use it to express things that are indefinite. Indefinite's an important word, so let me explain that to you. It means without definition, or it's unclear. Imagine a window that's foggy, and there's something on the other side. We don't know if that's a dog or if that's a cloud on the other side because the window is foggy. The subjunctive is a way of expressing uncertainty, or in the case of this temporality thing that we're talking about, events that haven't occurred yet. We don't know what's going to happen, and therefore our window into the future is foggy. Now, luckily, subjunctive is almost always introduced with an expression or a clause, which we'll get into later in the video. But first, let's talk about how we conjugate the subjunctive. Luckily, it's not that difficult. There are just a few steps. We start with a verb like comer in the infinitive, and we get the first person indicative from that. That's just a fancy way of saying the yo form. So I would say yo como, I eat. And we're going to take the root from that, this C-O-M without the O at the end. Now, the reason we're using the first person indicative and not the unconjugated verb is that for an irregular verb, that root is going to change. Now, the next thing we do is we look at this blue box, and we're going to see that this AR changes to ES, and verbs that end in ER or IR change to an A. So, comer, and we're using it with yo, becomes coma. We'll see in this chart that there's this crisscross happening. The E's go to the A's, and the A's go to the E's. So finishing out this use of comer, tú comas, yo coma, él, ella, usted coma. Two things to notice. In the first person, it's not yo como because there is no O. And the second thing is the first person here and the third person here are the same words. You'll have to look at the context in the sentence to help you find out who they're talking about. So let's use some examples. We'll look at hablar. Indicative for hablar would be yo hablo. We'll use the root from there to get yo hable. For dormir, which is irregular, we get the UE from there. We'll get yo duermo, and this is why we use the root from the first person present indicative. And we get yo duerma with an A at the end. Tener, also irregular, is yo tengo. We get the root from there, and we get yo tenga. Now, just as with any language, there are some irregularities, some things that don't follow the rules. If we look here, there are irregular subjunctive verbs. Verbs like dar, which becomes de in the subjunctive. Haber becomes haya. Ser becomes seya. Ir becomes vaya. These are irregulars that you're going to have to study. But just to help you out, if you see this Y here, you're going to see that in a lot of forms, these words end with a Y. That lets us know that something's a little different when we're looking at them. And over here on the right, you can see a chart for how to conjugate ir in the subjunctive. I said at the beginning that normally the use of subjunctive is led into with an expression or a clause. And in fact, a clause is a really common way to introduce the subjunctive. If we go down here, I'll remind you that a clause is a part of a sentence that has a subject and a verb. And the way that we have a clause lead into a clause is using this word here, que. Without the accent on the E, it means that, as I've drawn with this arrow. But with the accent, it's actually a question. What? I actually had a teacher that used to draw these accents enormously, so we always knew when an accent was being used. But que without the accent means that, as in the conjunction, the way that we unite two clauses. I think that you are beautiful. This is the clause 1 that has a subject, I, and a verb, think, and the second part that has a different subject and a different verb. And that unites the two of them. Now in English, that isn't always necessary, but in Spanish, que always is. In this example here, creo que necesitamos más tiempo. I think we need more time. Creo has I and think, and that's the first clause, and the second clause is we need. And que unites the two of them. It's necessary. In the next example, él ve que tienen dos perros. He sees that they have two dogs. He and sees is the first clause, and that they have two dogs is the second part, and they're connected with que. Now the question you'd be asking is, why are we talking about clauses? The reason is that when we're leading into the subjunctive, if the first clause in this is indefinite, it's going to mean that the second clause is the subjunctive. And the opposite of this would be, if the first clause is definite, then the second clause will be indicative. Now that we know that the first clause leads to the second clause having a subjunctive, we can use that to focus our efforts. I'll scroll down and we'll see this timeline that says present and future. And the idea with the subjunctive is we're stating something in the present, usually in that first clause, that talks about the future. It's possible that the future is going to change, and if that's the case, that's when we're going to use the subjunctive. Looking at this example here, esperamos que los perros coman su comida. We hope that the dogs eat their food. Us hoping is something that's happening in the present, right now. But the dogs eating their food is something that could or could not happen in the future. The outcome is unclear, just like the window that we're looking through for indefinite clauses. We can see the next example as well, scrolling down. Mis padres quieren que yo vaya a la universidad. My parents want me to go to college. Them wanting, that action is happening right now, but it's talking about something in the future, something that could or could not happen in the future. But those two facts are related. Them wanting is happening, they want something to happen in the future. And because of that, we use the subjunctive. And this next one, tu abuelo manda que vayas al supermercado. Your grandfather commands you to go to the supermarket. Him commanding something or demanding something happens right now, but he's asking you to do something that will happen in the future that could or could not happen. It's possible that the outcome will change. And that's what it's talking about when we talk about the window, the aspect of being indefinite in the first part of the sentence. I will mention that if you just have one part of this, if you just have the talking about the future, we'll use the subjunctive, or the future tense, that is very similar to will in English. I will do something, or you will do something. And finally, we have the last example. Para que haya tiempo, debemos irnos ya. Para que means so that, or in order to. So in order to have time, we must leave now. This is a flip of what we were talking about before, because in order to have time in the future, something needs to happen now. Because of this, using para que, in order to, we almost always use the subjunctive, because it's talking about something that hasn't been realized yet. Hopefully I've been able to answer those questions for how and why we use the subjunctive. It always relates to having that window, that aspect of being indefinite.